Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we have a news update for everyone. NWSL Free Agency window is absolutely kicking off. It's heating up for sure. And we've also got some more NWSL news in the front office bulking up. Before we get into everything, a quick reminder to download and follow us wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to us on YouTube so that you never miss out whenever we go live. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen, as a podcast helps us out so much. Thank you to everyone joining us live this morning. We appreciate it whenever you hop on and join us in the morning. And we are here to talk about all things soccer. Lisa, how you doing, buddy?
I am good. Yeah, I'm thrilled when everyone jumps on with us. So thanks for joining us in the chat. If you're live with us on YouTube, like this video, hit subscribe, chat with us because we read them, we throw them up on screen. We want to talk to you guys and hear everything. I'm good. It's finally stopped raining in Philadelphia. It's been raining here for what feels like a week straight.
Yeah.
Like last weekend we had beautiful weather, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's just been rainy. It's not freezing though, so like I'll take the rain over the freezing cold. So it's the sun is at least out today, and that is a very positive thing. We got some big free agency moves in the NWSL. Yeah. We've got Champions League happening because, hey, 2 days without the World Cup, and I was like twiddling my thumbs. What the heck do I do over here? How are you? How are you holding up?
Listen, I'm doing all right. I'm going to say that you're winning right now in the weather department. It's been a little gray, been a little misty out here in Chicago as well. Definitely don't have the sun quite yet, but
it's coming. It's coming your way.
Maybe you're gonna share some with us. But you know what? It's December. It's like, can we? December in Philly and in Chicago, like, should we anticipate something different? Probably not.
I mean, like, I would love some snow. Like, I'm okay with the precipitation coming down, but like 4 days of just straight rain is just dirty and gross.
It weighs on you.
I haven't been able to get my Christmas tree yet because I get a live one and they're all just sitting out there in the rain. I gotta
you're a real
hair dryer, blow them off a little bit. I don't know. I'm not bringing a wet tree in my house.
So you're an all natural. You're a real Christmas tree putter upper.
For sure. We practice fire safety here. Don't worry. We've got that all under control. But yeah, something about the smell of an evergreen in the living room is beautiful. I hope my landlord doesn't hear this.
Listen, I love to hear that from you. Look, I don't have to worry about that. Not the real Christmas tree person. Have a pre-lit tree and it looks beautiful. I'm very proud of it. Glad that it's up. Dog is doing well with it, not sniffing around it too much. So I'm happy for that. Yeah, honestly, put in the live chat, if you're joining us and listening to all the holiday chatter, put a Christmas tree, drop a Christmas tree emoji in the chat. Want to see it. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, we definitely want to shout out to Brittany Griner. We see that the Beach Dogs out putting in there, reading about the news on our way home. We have to shout out the players, honestly. WNBA Players Association, who kept up the messaging around getting Griner home, and shouting out the NWSL players who continued that messaging when the WNBA season was over. So a lot of happy folks out there today, a lot of celebrating, a lot of relief, I'm sure. So that's also some news, right? So let's sort of keep rolling with the NWSL news. There was some front office hires that the league mentioned this week. They added 3 senior hires to the league office. And folks might think, well, what's the big deal about that? The big deal about that is that it's necessary. Not a ton of senior hires. This is, when we're talking about the league growing, this is also one of those things, right? That the league's front office, the administrative level, is also growing as the league continues to grow. Carlin Hudson tabbed as director of strategy. Celine Perot Johnson named as chief financial officer, and Maureen Resch to serve as creative director. So
Huge.
some of these positions not existing before, but here they are now.
Yeah, I think that just it speaks to so much of the growth of the league, right? Because these positions didn't exist before. And now that the front office is expanding, the front office is also changed. They got a newer office, a bigger office. That announcement came a number of months ago. Jessica Berman, the commissioner of the league, saying that she really wanted to bulk up and expand what the NWSL was doing. And in order to do that, you need more people on the inside working day in and day out to make those things happen. So not only three big hires, three big time executive hires, all three females heading into the front office, which is fantastic to see. And Carlin Hudson, a former NWSL player. She was drafted to North Carolina Courage, spent some time with Washington Spirit, and then headed overseas before retiring. And then since doing that, worked a little bit with US Soccer, like has been inundated with the soccer world her entire life, let's just say, because former player, pro, and then working with US Soccer, and now heading into the NWSL. And that's what we want, right? Former players that have the experience playing not just professionally or collegiately, but in the league, in the NWSL, and understand everything that they went through in 2018, 2017, players like Hudson, and now being in positions of power where they can actually make change, actually listen and give that input of a player's perspective. That's so great to see. Yeah, a little bit of administrative upkeep for the NWSL and some big offseason moves for them.
Yeah, right. That's a good way to put it. It's off season for so many of us in the space. And yeah, hopefully this is just the start for the league in the administrative level. And hopefully there will be more roles to fill, and we continue to see those roles filled by women leading in those positions. We'd love to also see the continuation of adding more, Black and brown women in these roles and positions of leadership as well. So hopefully this is actually just the start and not just the finish of getting these hires into these positions, but big ones for the league moving forward, and excited to see what that's going to look like or what that's going to mean, having these types of roles for the league moving forward, because again it's a sort of a first time new additions type of things. It's
Right.
We're gonna have to see how these folks fit into the roster, right?
Exactly.
So
and the NWSL is small, right? Yes, we're in our 10th year of this, and now we have 12 teams, but like it's relatively small compared to some of the other leagues in America of their sports teams. So this growth is really huge, and this only projects the future of the league to continue to grow stronger and bigger and better.
Absolutely. Let's pivot to some more news in NWSL. Look, we've been talking all about it really since, November kind of rang in the first ever free agency period. So, of course, now that we're into December, there is some free agency news that we have to chat about. We've been talking about it little by little by little. It kind of got off to, let's say, maybe a slow start, but now it sort of feels like we're starting to get these announcements and these moves. I think we got to start right at the top of probably some of the biggest news this week. Midfielders Vanessa DiBernardo and Morgan Gautrat headed to Kansas City Current. Both players linking up with Kansas City on 2-year deals. Massive move for the Current.
This is massive. We knew that both of these players, Morgan Gautrat announcing earlier from the Chicago Red Stars that she would not be returning, and then Vanessa DiBernardo doing that just earlier this week, saying that she will not be returning to Chicago. And now we see that Kansas City has picked up these two prolific midfielders. And this is a Kansas City team that has most recently lost Victoria Pickett in the midfield and Kristen Edmonds, a defender. So they had a little bit of room on their roster, and this grab to get two midfielders in DiBernardo and Gautrat that not only have so much experience playing in the league as big time veterans, but playing together in the league and playing at Chicago, right? That partnership, that relationship, that what they do on the field, how they lead together in the locker room, it just is moving down south a little bit from Chicago to Kansas City. Even the way the Current announced that Gautrat and DiBernardo would be arriving in Kansas City, they did it together. It was super cute. Go check it out on their Twitter, Kansas City Current Twitter, because it was really great to see. Of course, they're in their uniform and their garb, but like Morgan Gautrat is trying to get into the training facility and she's like late and she doesn't have the code, and DiBernardo helps her in. It was really well done. And I like that. I like the creativity coming from these clubs. We saw it with Kelly O'Hara and Gotham earlier, right at the start of the free agency. But now with Morgan Gautrat and Vanessa DiBernardo really, really adding some great depth and talent to this Kansas City side, the future is very bright for Kansas City, I like to think, especially because they're coming off of a year where they made it to the NWSL championship. But these are huge players and a huge time grab. But it also means that they're leaving Chicago. And this is now 4 players in about a week's time that we have seen leave Chicago Red Stars. And Chicago started this free agency period with 7 free agents. They re-signed a number of them in Yuki Nagasato, and there's only 1 left now in Watt, still on the roster, that has not made an announcement. And they are now without DiBernardo, Gautrat, Colaprico in the midfield, Rachel Hill up top. These are like big name players. And now on the Chicago roster, there are only 4 midfielders left, and they don't have a lot of experience there. So like, what are you thinking when you look at Chicago at this point, Sandra? Like, what do you want to hear or see from Chicago in this moment?
Well, I think if you're looking at just the 2 teams in front of us, right? Kansas City Current and Chicago, obviously you're looking at Kansas City, and that's a win for them, right? Picking up these 2 type of caliber of players, adding them onto their roster. When you're looking at Chicago, it's a massive loss, and it's a loss in a number of ways, because that's one of the beautiful things about this free agency period, as there's going to be opportunities for these players to exercise their place in free agency. That's going to mean that these players get to move on to other teams, take a look at their options and choose the best one in front of them. And what that means is, on the other side of things, that means that there's going to be a team that is probably going to search for answers. And in this equation, with Kansas City, coming out on the winning end of that means that Chicago's on the losing end of that side. So I think it's tough. I think if you find yourself as a Chicago Red Stars supporter, or someone who was looking for, let's just say, quote unquote, answers from the team, you maybe aren't seeing any right now. You just are left with more questions. And I think it's a little bit tough to sort of gauge people's enthusiasm around something like free agency. I think if you are sort of looking at this and saying, well, what does that mean for Chicago? Well, unfortunately, it just means that they're out of really good, they're missing a ton of great players. Now you're talking about an announcement from San Diego Wave in which they signed Rachel Hill and then Danny Colaprico, and then you've got another double signing with Gautrat and DiBernardo. I also really love this buddy system, as you mentioned, 2 by 2, right? Just going off, and it's like Chicago Red Stars players going on to other teams who are not just other clubs, but they're contender caliber type of clubs, and they're also taking a friend along with them, right? Which is something else I think folks are sort of cracking jokes about as well. But I think if you're Chicago, I think that's a struggle. I think when we've been talking about this free agency period, the fact that there were 7 potential players that this club might not see return was big. I think more than any other team on this free agent list. And that is a tall task if that was anybody's club on this list of free agent players. So to have 7 players listed there is going to be incredibly difficult to sort of maintain that there's going to be an attempt to retain all 7 of those players. So they were able to bring back Nagasato. They were able to bring back Aaron Wright. And then we saw these announcements come out and say, hey, these following players have notified the Red Stars that they will not exercise. They're going to go ahead and exercise free agency, and they will not return to the club. So I think, giving the heads up is a classy move, I think, from some of these players. I think when it comes to free agency, maybe you don't have to do that type of stuff.
Right.
I can see that exists. But I think if you're Chicago, I think there's still more questions in front of you. We saw a lot of teams put out their sort of, off-season rosters in place. And they made mention that they were trying to negotiate with the free agents that were listed on there. Now, unfortunately, that didn't work out. And so that is sort of what is highlighting things. I mean, this is, I think if you've been paying attention to the Red Stars over the last 2 years specifically, this isn't too shocking or surprising. And this is actually the second consecutive offseason in which we have seen a bit of a mass exodus from players from this franchise. So it just constantly goes back to that original point in which clubs are going to have to maintain a certain amount of credibility, a certain amount of resources, a certain amount of support in order to not only recruit players, but retain them as well.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, if nothing else, free agency, I think, is showing many people that it's really going to come down to how clubs are presenting themselves. I'm also I think the other curious side of that is we're talking about these specific midfielders, how they were key targets. Like, they were probably key targets for many clubs, and yet they chose San Diego and they chose Kansas City Current. So I'm also very curious about some of the, like, what does the pitching look like for some of these teams, for some of these players?
And I think you have to look at the salary, right? Money definitely plays a factor in these. Some of the players that have made moves in the free agency, you can kind of discern, okay, they're going home, right? You look at a Kristen Edmonds, like, she is from North Jersey. She wants to get back to Gotham, 35 years old. Yeah, that's a great move for her. She's heading back home. But when you look at the move for Hill going to San Diego, Colaprico going to San Diego, DiBernardo and Gautrat heading to Kansas City, there has to be a good chunk of change in that, because it's well-deserved for these players, right? They get to now negotiate their salary, what they're worth, and where they want to play. But I would love to be a fly on the wall in the room to know what a team like Kansas City is offering these two players to come and also come together. I know you talked a little bit about the dual partnership, Lucy, in our chat. I want to give a shout out to this comment because it's made me giggle. Well, you need someone to sit with at lunchtime, so you take a buddy. And that's exactly what Chicago did. And also, I'm sorry if I'm butchering any of these names, Flang Slammer, Chicago Red Stars, they're going to experiment with five aside. They've got Alyssa Nair, Tierna, Milazzo, Stevens, and Pugh. It's a cost-cutting technique because, hey, their roster is really, really quite depleted. And it is, because when you look at the players that Chicago has just lost in Colaprico, DiBernardo, and Gautrat, specifically in the midfield, I'm not even talking about Rachel Hill as a forward. There are now only 4 midfielders left on the Chicago Red Stars roster as of this morning and this recording. Jill Aguilera, Sarah Waldmo, Sam Fisher, and Channing Foster. Sarah Waldmo was out for maternity leave last year. Jill Aguilera, she played in 5 games last year. Sam Fisher played in 13 games, 5 starts. Channing Foster, 1 game. So those four players on the current Chicago roster, they played in a combined 19 matches last year for the Red Stars. The 3 midfielders that Chicago just lost in Gautrat, DiBernardo, and Colaprico combined for 49 games. DiBernardo and Colaprico playing in every single one of the regular season games.
They were absolutely integral players last year.
Yes.
Not to paint a gloomier picture, more gray, but I believe that Channing Foster is one of these players that might not be returning to the Red Stars. I believe maybe she might have been away. And then we've also got Sarah Waldmo. I know you mentioned as well, but we have to remove her from the equation as well, because recently announced with the Red Stars that she's going to retire from the NWSL. So this is another, I think, midfielder that folks are maybe looking at saying like, oh, like, this is somebody who can kind of come back into the fold, maybe do that. But no, like, she's making the choice to be with her family. And so it's even less. So even like some of the names that you just rattled off now, we're still plucking some out. So it's
now we're down to 2. Jill Aguilera and Sam Fisher are the 2 midfielders that combine for like 20.
And this is just coming off of last season, and this is as rookies as well, right? So there's also that. This is like, you had 2 players coming up as in their first professional year, coming in and getting these game minutes. So it's I think if you're looking obviously at the near future, at the season in front of you, no, it's not a good place in terms of roster building where the Chicago Red Stars are at right now. Who I think what we're also, getting reminded in this free agency period is how integral sort of those possession minded type of midfielders are in this league.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that in the move with Colaprico to the Wave. Casey Stoney very quickly recognizing what that team needed to do in the offseason and the type of player that they needed to target in free agency, and getting that player in somebody like a Colaprico. And then for Kansas City, targeting these two midfielders as well, in light of question marks around a player like Sam Mewis, and where she's at in her rehab period with her knee injury, and what decision making is happening on her end around that in terms of her playing career, and also having an additional midfielder on the free agency list, like somebody like a Desiree Scott, and that's on top of the players that you mentioned that they had already said farewell to, and somebody like a Kristen Edmonds or Victoria Pickett mid-season last year, or this past season as well. So there were holes in that midfield for the Current that they needed to fill as well, or at least prepare to fill in the event that they were unable to re-sign somebody like a Desiree Scott, or in the event that somebody like a Sam Mewis is still, needing some more time, with the injury. So I think, on Chicago's end, there's not a ton of midfielders left on this free agency market, and I'm not too sure if there are conversations that are being had with any of those types of players listed on the free agency list to bring to the Red Stars. I'm not sure what you are presenting to these types of players, the veteran, because I mean all of these players who are still on this free agent list at minimum have 6 years of playing experience in the leagues. So these are not new, young, fresh-faced players that you can pitch them on a new chapter.
They know what they want.
Yeah, these are players who know what they want in their career. They're looking for something very specific.
They know what they're worth. They know what they want. They know the type of style they want to play. And they also understand all the coaches in the league and what style the teams play. And as a player, that's something I would look at and say, I don't want to go there. That's not this type. That's not the style of soccer that is conducive to my playing style. And
these current players on the free agency list are in a very specific phase of their career. So it's like you're not pitching to like, hey, like come build something new with us. That's not something that maybe a veteran player is gonna really sort of sink their.
They don't have the energy for that.
Yeah, so it's tough. I think it's tough if you're on the Chicago Red Stars side of things, and that's just with this sort of recent picture of this franchise. That's not you and I even talking about the fact that there's still a lot of chatter about new majority ownership stake being sold in this franchise. The fact that the Chicago Red Stars are also a franchise that have brought in some new leadership as well, and how that's going to look like, and how these new folks at the administrative level are going to continue to try to build things out and fleshing out. So I think with all of the question marks, I think that sort of paints a really tough and gray picture for this franchise right now. I think it makes an already hard job for associate general manager Michelle Lomnicki even harder. And I think there are folks who are find themselves as either Chicago Red Stars fans or supporters, and are just looking for something, anything at this point to grasp onto and be able to hang on. So I think that's sort of where this franchise maybe finds themselves at this moment. They've got to give their supporters something to believe in, and they just simply haven't done that right now at this point.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because Chicago needs to make moves. They've been incredibly quiet. So, like, what do you want to see from Chicago at this point? Because even, like, you can't really hang your hat on the draft. They have a first-round pick, but Their first round pick doesn't come until number 7, right? So like you want to see Chicago make a move for a midfielder at this point?
And there's also no guarantee that whoever they drafted, they decide to draft in the first round. We don't know if they're maybe thinking about trading that pick, but if they decide to draft in the first round, if that player's even interested in playing for the Chicago Red Stars. I mean, this is a team that, again, this is the second consecutive offseason where we've seen a mass player exodus. And even in 2021, when free agency didn't exist, there were a number of players who left per request. Players went to people in the front in at the administrative level, said, we want out. We want to go. Figure it out. And the club spun that into like, hey, like they came to us and look at us, we're honoring their wishes. Congratulations. Right. And so now free agency changes that. You have players who don't have to go and ask for permission to leave, make an exit for a club. And so I think going from last year, you also had players, retiring. Zoe Gorowski, retiring from playing professionally. They had their 2021 draft pick, not interested in joining up with the Chicago Red Stars, and Madison Haley. They ended up trading away, or they ended up including Kelsey Turnbow as part of a package deal to San Diego Wave with Doniak and Johnson in order for there to be sort of expansion draft protection, right? So it's like, is there a draft that's coming up in January? Sure. Does that mean they can make a pick? Yeah, of course they can make a pick. Does that mean that player is going to report to the Chicago Red Stars? I don't know. This is a long time running here where maybe we could see if that's going to happen for them. So, like I said, I think it's a lot of gray area right now. I think I said it made a hard job already harder for Associate General Manager Michelle Lomnicki. That's tough. And I think if you're a supporter, if you're looking for something, I think it's not just about getting a player at this point. I think if you're someone who finds yourself a fan of the Chicago Red Stars, if you're someone who finds yourself as an actual supporter, if you're one of those people who have been a season ticket holder for quite some time, you're not just looking for like a player. I really don't think that. I think there's a lot of passionate folks out here in Chicago who find themselves part of a larger Red Stars community. And I don't think at this point in the Chicago Red Stars history that those types of folks, the season ticket holders, the supporters group folks, that they are looking for just a player acquisition. I think they're looking for meaningful change for the franchise. So I think, would a cool player signing help? Yeah, of course. But that's I don't think that's the end all be all for folks who are keeping an eye on the Red Stars.
We definitely have some Debbie Downers in our chat here saying that they're not too great about this. Hey, like saying we might be screwed in Chicago, but you guys still have great players there. Like you still have a list there. You still got Mallory Pugh. You still have a back line that grew incredibly last year, right? You've got Aaron Wright, you've got Zoe Morris, you've got Tatum Milazzo, you've got Tierna Davidson coming back into the fold of things. Like there's a lot of bright spots there, but the giant hole in the midfield is going to make it very difficult for Chicago to continue to play the way that they have historically been playing. So, hey, maybe that means a shift in formation or in tactics or in style and what you're doing. And it's no longer this big possession build up, controlling so much of the game in the midfield because you don't have 10-year veterans anymore that have played together for years, holding down that midfield spot. You just don't have that anymore, and they will not have that, right? Like that's never coming back. No matter who they trade, no matter who they get in, you're not going to get 3-4 midfielders that have played together so consistently under the same system. So it's turning a new page. Let's see what new things will come from Chicago. Maybe we'll see a different style soccer, and hey, maybe that'll benefit Chicago in the long run, and they'll make it to the championship, and continue that playoff streak, but maybe bring home some hardware. This is early days speaking here, but don't be so pessimistic. We got to have some.
I love. I'm from Chicago. We're built on pessimism and realism. Come on now. No, but I love it though. I'm with you. I think that was sort of the narrative around, or part of the narrative around the club last year. While there was a lot of negative headlines as they were looking for a new head coach, at the time, when you're looking at the players that you get an opportunity to work with, I mean, you were talking about a top 4 midfield in the league, you know, getting to coach somebody like Mallory Pugh, having somebody in net like Alyssa Nair, that is a very promising head coaching position that probably would have attracted, you know, a lot of candidates, and they landed on Petroselli. So now moving forward, obviously that's shifted. That top four midfield looks much different than it did last year. But now you have this sort of angle where it's like, okay, there's a lot of young talent here that have showed that they can hang with some of the best in NWSL. There's still somebody like a Mallory Pugh. You've still got somebody like Alyssa Nair, and then you've got tons of defenders on the back line, like you mentioned, including a Casey Kruger, who was working her way back from maternity leave late in the playoff push for Chicago Red Stars. So there are certain things that they're going to point at and look at and hold on to and sort of continue to build off of that. But that's a big hole, like you said, to try to fill in that middle third. We'll see.
It's a giant hole for sure. And it's a huge get for KC. Massive.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of excitement around, you know, having two players like DiBernardo and Gautrat come to the Current. I do think it waves a lot of question marks around Sam Mewis, though, and what that means in their middle third, especially if they landed somebody like a Gautrat in this scenario, who is positionally kind of similar tactically to somebody like a Sam Mewis.
And we have no word on Sam Mewis at this point and her injury. Last we heard from U.S. head coach Vlatko Adanovsky about her was that she had a bit of a setback, right? And it was going to maybe take a little bit longer for her to get back to the pitch. So that's, I mean, I think that's something that you can't even take into an account right now because she didn't play at all last year, right? Like even someone like a Lynn Williams, yes, coming back and actually training during the championship weekend with Kansas City. But this is a Kansas City Current side that has an incredible roster that they have continued to keep. Yes, they lost Pickett, they lost Edmonds, but they've still got a lot of good players, right? They've got Mace, Kaiser, Elizabeth Ball, Lola Bonta also in the midfield. So you look at that midfield right now. You've got Morgan Gautrat, Vanessa DiBernardo, and Lola Bonta. Are you kidding me? Like, I want to go watch that team play now without any training under their belt. Like, that is fantastic to see. And then you look at the free agency list, and we touched on this. Desiree Scott, incredible veteran that has been consistent with Kansas City and really helped lead them as a veteran in the locker room and on the pitch to the NWSL championship. She's a free agent and there's been no word from her. And I imagine that Matt Potter wants to keep Desiree Scott around. It has been nothing but positive words coming from his mouth about her and obviously what she does on the pitch. She's a Canadian international. She's got so much skill and talent, and she's a destroyer. That's what they call her on this Kansas City side. But then in the locker room, she really brings them all together. She's that positive force and that positive player. So that's a player that Kansas City for sure has to have circled about, hey, you want to keep this player? Where does she fit into it? And if I'm Desiree Scott, I'm looking at these two acquisitions in Gautrat and DiBernardo, and I'm saying like, all right, can I get a little bit more bang for my buck? Can I be a little bit happier at somewhere else? And that is the beauty of free agency. Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
God, these players have free agency.
We've had a lot of fun chatting about this so far, and it's not even over. But I hear you on Scott. I mean, when we went to the championship final to cover things out in DC, I mean, that's all we heard, a great locker room piece. But I don't know. I don't know if she returns to Kansas City. I think she's again, veteran of this league, probably a player that we might not see throughout the entire regular season because, you know, Canadian international, she's probably going to be tied to a lot of friendlies throughout the first half of the regular season. And then, you know, everything, if it all works out, off to another World Cup.
Right.
So I think maybe Kansas City, you know, still continues to, you know, to sort of try to have negotiations with this player. But I don't think you make not just one, but a double signing or veteran midfielders and two very good midfielders and expect to keep a Desiree Scott in the mix as well. Because another player that we're not talking about for Kansas City is Alex Loera and where she fits into this as well. Loera having a massive rookie season for Kansas City Current. I mean, dark horse for you and me on this show in terms of, a potential rookie of the year candidate, fell just short of that, but ended up going all the way to the championship final with this current squad. And again, if you have the addition of Gautrat and DiBernardo, if you have a question mark around Sam Mewis, and then you've got a very young, promising, good, talented player in Alex Loera, I think you're
Right.
solid. I think you're solid moving forward.
And like when I look at rosters, this is sneak peek into Lisa's brain. When I look at rosters, I look at them in formational like visualization in my brain. And I know what Matt Potter plays. Like he was shifting between a 3-back and a 4-back, but it was 5 in the midfield. We had wing backs. And you have to look at that when you look at this Kansas City roster, right? You've got CeCe Kaiser, Kristen Hamilton up top. Like that's probably not going anywhere. And then you look at this midfield, and between Morgan Gautrat, DiBernardo, the 2 new acquisitions, Lola Bonta, Haley Mace, I'm going to throw in there, Alex Luera, who's also been pushing up and playing higher on this team. That's pretty stacked. And those are starters, right? Like I'm talking about starters, players that you want to be getting 80 to 90 minutes consistently week in and week out. There is not a lot of room. Right? And I'm not even talking about Sam Mewis. I didn't even list her there. And then Desiree Scott, like I agree with you. I'm not sure if Desiree Scott returns to Kansas City. There's a lot of talent still on this roster. I think defensively, they're going to be okay, right? Despite losing Pickett towards the end of last season, and then Kristen Edmonds. I think Edmonds maybe was a hole that had been opened up when Kristen Edmonds got traded to Gotham for Kansas City. But when you add in a Gautrat and DiBernardo, positionally, it's not a like for like match in those players, but in their leadership and their veteran ability and their attitude in the locker room, yes, that's a like for like match in what you're doing there. And that's one thing about this free agency is every team is either losing a veteran and a key piece to what happens in the mentality side of it, but they're also gaining that when you're getting these free agents. You're not getting rookies. You're not getting like averaging 2 matches a game or 2 matches a season players. Like you're getting players that have put in a lot of hours, a lot of playing time, and that bolsters up a team. I mean, Kansas City, this is a huge trade for them. I think San Diego also on the winning side of some of these free agencies. You look at the San Diego roster, I'm scared. That is a force. That is a force.
Yeah, no. I hear you 100%. I think I'm in 100% agreement with you. And that, of course, these moves absolutely are probably going to impact and change the way a team like the Red Stars are going to try to play next season in 2023. But I think it also changes a little bit of what teams like San Diego or teams like Kansas City are going to play as well. I think they're going to look a little different. I think your midfield is a little bit different when it has somebody like a Desiree Scott in it, the destroyer, versus somebody like a Morgan Gautrat, who is a player that is so cool, calm, and collected on the ball.
A bit more of a playmaker.
The type of patience that Gautrat has on a ball compared to so many other midfield others is completely different. So it's also going to make Kansas City look and feel different in their midfield as well. I think some of the physicality that we saw from Kansas City last year in that middle third, might it go missing? Sure. But I think they're getting something else much more important in that middle third than just sort of, a brawling and sort of, being a wrecking ball in the middle third. I think it's going to look a little bit different. I think it's going to be better when you've got attacking players, like a Kaiser, like a Hamilton. I mean, my God, I want to see Elise Bennett receiving some of these through balls from Morgan Gautrat or Vanessa DiBernardo. Like, give it to me.
Chills. It gives me chills. I love that. Shout out to VU in our chat right now saying that I like this shout. Desiree Scott goes to Washington Spirit. This is a team that also needs to bulk up their midfield because they've got a free agent, Tori Huster, on that free agency list. Like I could see that happening. I mean, a lot of team needs midfielder. Heck, Chicago needs them. That could be like Desiree Scott could head up to Chicago. They need players there. I like that shout though. You never know. I mean, the teams that have been quiet, OL Reign has been quiet. Washington Spirit has been quiet. I mean, Chicago's been quiet. They're just saying goodbye to everyone. It's a lot of like farewell posts happening there. But
I wanted to maybe see something from Angel City. This is their second, off season. What are they going to look like? I think they're a team that could have benefited from bulking up their midfield. I had heard through the rumor mill that Gautrat was a target for Angel City. I think if that's if there's a lot of weight or truth to that, I think that speaks even louder of this move by Kansas City, that get the options that were in front of a player like Gautrat, that she chose Kansas City, right? So I think free agency, we're thrilled for it. It's an exciting time. And there's still a ton, like you said, left on this free agent roster. And I think, if you're a team like the Red Sox, maybe you're trying to take a look and nab some of those players that are remaining, on this free agent list as well. But listen, New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC, also a team that has they rang in the free agency period with the announcement of Kelly O'Hara, and they sort of have continued to stay relevant, right? In this piece, we've talked about how they signed, Abby Smith. We talked about how they brought in Kristen Edmonds. Now they've seen that they signed defender Neely Martin from Racing Louisville. So this is another team that's going to look and feel a little bit different going into the regular season as well. And I would anticipate that they're probably not done making moves. I think this is a team that could also probably try to work the draft if they'd like to. Again, we're talking about franchises that are, looking like really promising clubs to play for in 2023.
Yeah. I mean, Gotham, this is a good get in Neely Martin, defender, because they just lost Estelle Johnson. She just went to North Carolina. We talked about that earlier this week. So, yeah, I like that Gotham is staying relevant. It's not like just one giant dump. They're not doing things in pairs like Chicago was letting go of their players in pairs. It's been a steady flow and pretty consistent. And as you mentioned, number 1 draft pick for Gotham in the NWSL draft January 12th. And that's something that I think I want to keep an eye on, because are they going to trade that away? Are they going to look to get something else for that? Are they going to keep that number 1 draft pick? We're like less than a month out. January 12th is the NWSL draft, but I'm already like mock drafting in my head. And we're going to do that for everyone. Like, we'll let you know what teams need what players are signing up for the draft, what holes they can fill, mock draft style for the NWSL draft. But as of right now, Gotham holds that number 1 spot. And that is a very coveted spot, I think, especially when you look at the players that are entering the draft this year and the talent.
Yeah, I love that the offseason has sort of expanded to it's sort of a multifaceted, like, kind of off season now. Like, we didn't have free agency before. Now there's a free agency period to chat about. There were eras in NWSL where an off season would just not have any action between, what was it, late October all the way through January. And once the new year rang in, that is when you saw all of these announcements. And then like a week later, there would be a draft. That's not necessarily the case anymore. There's all this really great chatter. There's all this good stuff. We love to see it. It's called growth. We love to see it for NWSL. We love it. We love it. We love it. Let's close out with maybe highlighting some Women's Champions League. We saw some really good matches take place. Bayern defeating Barcelona 3-1, a record crowd at Allianz Arena for Wednesday's FC Bayern versus FC Barcelona match. We had Arsenal defeat Juventus 1-0, Lyon winning over Zurich 4-0, and Benfica 3-1 over Rosengard. There are matches today, so make sure you continue following Women's Champions League. PSG, Chelsea, and Wolfsburg are playing today. Make sure you keep an eye on that. Getting good.
Yeah.
Good in the groups here.
It's getting really good. Yesterday's matches were great for those that are keeping tabs on our girl, Lindsey Horan, U.S. International. She's with Lyon. She notched the opening goal yesterday in their 4-0 win over Zurich. Today, we've got PSG playing Chelsea and Wolfsburg. So that's definitely what I'm looking at. But between yesterday and today, we've got Arsenal that stays undefeated in the Champions League. Lyon gets their second straight win. So now they're 2-1-1 in Champions League. Barcelona, they suffered their first loss. That was to Bayern, and Bayern's back on the winning track. So both Barcelona and Bayern in the same group, they're 3-1. Today with Chelsea, they're the only team with 3 wins. So they play Real Madrid today. So this will be a really good matchup. Real Madrid 1-1 so far in Champions League. Wolfsburg, this is another team that's been hot, 2 wins and a draw. They're looking to stay undefeated, and PSG looking for just their second win. I'm thrilled for this. I like this. We don't get World Cup, so we get Women's Champions League, and it's a great trade-off. I'll watch this all day.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Keep an eye on it, folks. Make sure you're paying attention to all the good things happening across the globe. That's all we've got for you today on Attacking Third. Thank you all so much for listening to Attacking Third this morning. Download, follow, and listen to us anywhere you get your podcast. You could watch us too. Go ahead and subscribe to us at youtube.com/Attacking Third. And a reminder that if you have a question for us, you can leave us a 5-star review with a question on Apple Podcasts, and we'll answer it during a mailbag segment. Lisa and I will be back with so much more. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.